Ready, go.
How many of you guys have family or friends in the military? Have, somebody, yeah, there's my people. Have maybe been in the military yourself. Both of my parents are part of the military. But I'm not going to talk about them today. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite vets that I've ever met in my entire life. His name's Matthew. He would live on an intersection that I would follow every single day after school. So after class, I would walk about a mile east to go to work in this T-shaped position, and then I'd do the 2 miles home. So I'd walk past him like twice, sometimes 3 times if I was, wandering around town afterwards every day. Matthew was an interesting guy. I didn't talk to him at first. I don't deal with dirty very well. I don't like dirty. I don't like talking to people who are dirty. And Matthew was the epitome of a stinky, beer-stained, smoking homeless guy. The epitome. Every town's got them. And one day when I was walking past, I felt this stir in my spirit to come sit down. Now mind you, I'm a 7th grader, and there's this big, burly, friggin' stinky old guy sitting on the corner, and for whatever reason, I need to go sit next to him. I still don't know why, but it changed my life. I sat down. We started talking about our lives. I was telling him about school and classes and people, and then I asked the question, why are you here? And his response was something that I'll try to give justice to. I have no family or friends. I can't get a job. I have cataracts. I was in the Army for 30 years, and they sent me out on a medical discharge because I couldn't see anymore. I have no prospects. I have nowhere to go. I stay in Olympia even though it's wet and cold and rainy because the people are nice, and everywhere else no one makes eye contact with me. And that's the story of vets all over the place. And the reason I mention this is because there's a pericope in Mark 10 that I really resonate with. Because when I left Matthew, I was changed. I stopped, I sat down, I talked to him, I invested my time. And when I left, my whole world had changed. I've been angry about 6 times in my life that I can count. I don't get angry often. And that is a time where I had the most angry prayer I can imagine. Because I'd been going to church for about a year now, hated going to church at the time. I'll be that person. I was a toe-dipping Christian. I was stuck going to church before I liked it. And when I saw Matthew, I realized the church isn't helping him. The church isn't doing anything to help his spiritual or life needs. And I go to a church that is very mission-oriented. We have all sorts of outreach. We do a homeless ministry on the streets. We can't do much more ministry otherwise. But most of the ministry we do is without Jesus. We meet the physical needs, but we don't meet the spiritual. So back to that pericope, which is on your little sheet. It's in Mark 10, verses 46 through 52. Sorry. Oh my goodness, weird Bible. And they came to Jericho. And as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. All right, pause. We've all seen people sitting on the roadside, yeah? Not the cleanest. Generally, they're stuck there. They're not usually enjoying themselves. We've all seen the homeless people hanging out on the corner asking for money. Okay, this is Bartimaeus. This is his reality. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. And he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." A lot of the times we read through scripture and we see passages like this and we don't imagine the emotion behind it. This was his only chance. He'd been blind for who knows how long. He had been stuck on that corner begging for who knows how long. And he saw his chance and he took it. And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." Now this is the same crowd that had just moments before rebuked him and told him to be silent. All it took was one man Jesus to change their minds, to step up. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." And Jesus said to him, Go your way. Your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. What would Jesus do? A concept that has swept the nation for years. What would Jesus do? Jesus stopped. He took time. He made time for this blind beggar sitting on the road, and he invested himself into him. Charles Sheldon is the guy who started this big thing, this big movement of what would Jesus do. And you can see it all laid out in his book and his steps, which I will forever say is a great book. And he's challenging his congregation to do everything with Jesus as the center. Before you do anything, you make sure that it lines up with the heart of God. So for those of you who don't know me, and those of you who do, community development is my heart. Like, Jesus has got my heart, but community development is where my passion's at. I'm not here as some ordained pastor that, knows what's going on. And I know what's going on, but I'm just a person with a message. I'm taking this in a very apostolic preaching kind of method, because I don't have lots of training. That's not who I am. I'm just like you guys. But my heart is for making a difference. And Jesus, that brilliant man, he decides to pull out participatory community development theory in freaking 1st century AD. That's brilliant. This is something people have been researching and thinking about for years and years and years, and he's doing it way before it's even a thing. What do you want me to do for you? It's a simple question, and a lot comes with that question. It's a, hey, I am here for you. Hey, I want to talk with you and communicate. I want to be in relationship with you. But it also opens it up so that Bartimaeus can talk back. It's not here, I'm just going to do this for you, go on your way. No. What can I do for you? And I love this question. But I almost love it, not quite as much, but almost as much as I love Bartimaeus' statement. Jesus, son of David. Oh, I love that statement. That statement has so much more meaning than I feel like we generally give credit to it. In that statement, Bartimaeus is recognizing Jesus as the son of David. David was a king, thus making Jesus royalty. He's recognizing the status that Jesus has. But at the same time, he's giving his allegiance to Jesus. He's giving his heart to Jesus. He doesn't have a lot to give. He's sitting on a corner begging. He doesn't have things he can give. He can't give financially. He can't give works. He can't do a lot of things because he's stuck sitting on that corner. But he can give his faith, and he can give his allegiance. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own personal experiences with people outside of Matthew. Because Matthew is a really amazing person, and he changed my life, but he disappeared after that day, and I have no idea what happened to him. A couple weeks ago, which Jermaine's going to know about, I got to spend a day with the homeless in Reading, which I haven't been able to do. Something I usually do back home, but I haven't had the chance to do it in Reading yet. And I met two main people that I'm going to talk about, Joel and Daryl. Joel is a firefighter, or at least he was. He led legions. He was in charge of 500 to 1,000 men on a given day, fighting fires all over California. He is a man of action, and honestly, if he had a new set of legs, he would be out there fighting fires with the best of them, because that's where his heart is. Joel doesn't really have family or friends. He's a little rough around the edges. I had to sit on the curb with him for about an hour before he actually said anything of any substance besides, nice weather. You want to smoke? And I'm not saying that, Joel is this perfect guy, but he was pretty amazing. he could lead 500 people and not be tired of it. He's like 60 something, and he's like, if I was out there, we wouldn't be having any of the shenanigans we have now. These new guys don't know what they're doing. Amazing. He's a great guy. But there's nobody there who invests in him. There's no one there who stopped and taken a moment. We sat on that corner for hours. Dozens and dozens of people walked by. The one person who decided to have any sort of conversation with him was the police officer who told him he was sitting too long and he'd need to move. That was it. Nobody else decided to make eye contact, to really talk to him. It's incredibly frustrating to see when you see people struggling and you see perfectly good Christians, people with crosses around their neck, you know, the super goody two-shoes Christians that show it with like some serious bling. Nothing from them. So I talked with him for a while, like 4 or 5 hours, and then I moved on over to the promenade up in like the upper part of downtown Reading. Sorry. That's where I met Daryl. Now Daryl, you might know him. He's on a little red scooter. He has a little cardboard sign. It's like 8 inches across. And it says he wants milk and he wants change. And the reason he wants change is to pay for his utility bills because Reading utilities is crazy. And the reason he's sitting on that corner asking for money is because he's in probably one of the worst living environments he can possibly be in. He's in an abusive home. But he is a regular Bethel attendant. You get him talking about Bethel and he will have you in stitches. He's got all sorts of cool stories and conversations. He can name off half the church, it feels like. And after you've been sitting there for an hour and he's listed off half the church, you're like, okay, I know Bethel a little more. And he's got a church family. He's got people who have invested in him. He's got people who love on him. And I feel like the church needs to be doing that more. I'm going to take you guys through Matthew 25. Actually, I'm going to take it to James 1 first. James 1 talks about being doers of the word, not hearers. This is something that's pretty popular, pretty common. Something most Christians have heard. It's on t-shirts. But a lot of the times we don't take it to heart. And Matthew 25 has a really cool way of telling people about ways they can take it to heart. This is Jesus talking. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you also did for me. Encountering Christ in the poor, in the sick, in those in jail. Encountering Christ in those who are unfed, who need water, unclothed. This is what my life's all about since meeting Matthew. Since meeting somebody who was unfed. Since meeting somebody who was without clean water. This is how the word has changed me. Sorry, I always get all like emotional when I talk about Matthew. This is how apostolic mission kind of revolved around. It was stopping and taking time to live life with people and to invest in them. This is something that the church fails at as a whole. This is something that community development, which is a very secular field, has had to take over. Missions are great at it. Missionaries are fantastic. That's their whole role in life. But that's not what we're called to. We're called to be the righteous who feed, who clothe, who give water. We're called to be the people who invest and care. And a lot of the times, we're Christians on Sundays, and Monday shows up, and we just walk on by them. There are people around you all over the place that need that kind of love, that need that kind of care. And they're just not getting it. All right. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we don't do these things, and I totally get it. A lot of it comes from fear. A lot of it comes from a vulnerable place of your own. A lot of people just don't have the ability to care and do things that they want to do and that they feel like God has called them to. A lot of it's fear-based. I totally get that. I grew up in a very impoverished house. We were always about one step away from being homeless. And I get that's why my heart is for the homeless, and I get that's why I really love caring on people who are impoverished. Maybe your heart's not for that, and I totally get it, because we are called to different things, and that is a good thing, because that means diversity. Maybe your heart is for kids. In Shasta County, there's about 624 foster kids at the moment. If Bethel Church alone went to go and foster kids and find families for those kids, they could probably take care of all of them, if not most of them. Maybe your heart is for people who have mental illness, or people who are human trafficking victims. Maybe it's for people who are in jail. Maybe you're a Mark 20 or a Matthew 25 person, and every single thing on that list was what you need to do. But if it lines up with Scripture, and it lines up with the heart of God, just do it. If it's something that you feel called to, you need to ignore the consequences. You need to have a faith like Bartimaeus. Ignore the people, ignore the crowd, ignore what's going on around you, because Jesus is what you need to focus on. His heart is to stop, like the Good Samaritan, to make time for the woman at the well, and to invest into Bartimaeus. And it's time that the church does that as well. So, if you're under the age of 18, I get it. Talking to homeless people, probably not the safest idea, especially not alone. 1 in 30 minors in the U.S. is homeless. Find a friend. If you're an adult and you are financially able to do something, take those little packs. You can find them all over Pinterest and the news. They're super cool. You put a little emergency blanket, some soup, something like that. Something easy for them to make. Invite them to Jesus and to church. But most importantly, just stop. We get it. You're busy. Life's busy. Things happen. But the heart of God is to stop. To stop. To make time. And to invest in people. Thank you.